Shalom, shalom, and good morning. Good, beautiful Sabbath morning to each one of you today. Thank you for the privilege of being able to come into your home. Thank you for inviting me to come onto your computer screen, your laptop, your cell phone, whatever it may be, whatever access point you may have. Thank you that you've considered inviting me to share this time with you. I look forward to doing so, and let's get right to it because we only have so much time. This is the week in which we study, meditate upon, and draw life lessons out of Parsha number 38 in the Great Torah cycle. This is the Parsha that's called Korach. Kuf, Resh, and Chet in Hebrew. It is found, its address, as it were, in the Torah scroll is from the book of Bamidbar, also in English known as Numbers. Chapter 16, verse 1 through chapter 18, verse 32. It's about 3 chapters worth of the beautiful words of our King, inspired words of our King, designed to give us access to the revelation flow, the wisdom of heaven, the brilliance of his strategy rooms in heaven, and he relates these stories to us that have an essence of holiness to them, that have a power, an energy of kedusha, as it's called, the holiness energy, that awakens something deep within our spirit, deep within us, that is not of our necessarily just of our mind or intellect, not certainly just of our emotional seat of emotional feelings and thoughts, but instead is something eternal, that which the Holy One has put into the hearts of man, the eternity that the Holy One has put into the hearts of man. So, Numbers 16:1 through 18:32, I entitled this, or maybe you could say subtitled this, our next set of tests. As you know, we're in the wilderness season. We began, all the book of Numbers is about our life in the wilderness between Sinai, as we take what we learned at Sinai and try to apply it to life in the wilderness, life in real life, life with struggles, life with bad circumstances, difficult challenges, life with difficult people, life. This is where we apply the beauty and the majesty of his Torah instructions of how humanity is supposed to live their lives on earth, to reach maximum potential and to achieve maximum fruitfulness and to steward the creation in its appropriate way. As we're doing this is our wilderness testing period. And we have been through multiple tests. We'll get to talk a little bit of that in a moment. But this week we have certain specific tests. And these are tipping point critical tests. This is could be breaking point tests if you're not careful, because many are called, but few are chosen. We will discuss that many times during our discussions today. Many are called, but few are chosen. Of course, these are the words of the Master, Yeshua of Nazareth. So our next test, in Parsha Korach, we have the test of propaganda bombardment. We will be bombarded with propaganda, with words, with phrases, with slogans, with high-sounding rhetoric that all is much sound and fury signifying nothing, but it will be seductive. It will sound so high and mighty and moral and right. And yet it will have no substance to it. It will all be fluff, all will be surface. So our next test, our propaganda bombardment, which is always accompanied by lawlessness and lovelessness. The Hebrew word or phrase that we'll refer to a few times is sinat chinam. It's usually translated as baseless hatred. That's sort of a summary from a Western mindset. What sinat chinam really translates to be is a refusal or rejection, a discounting of grace or mercy given to other human beings. In other words, we want nothing above mercy. We only want judgments. The reversal of the kingdom of mercy triumphs over judgments. Sinach is judgment triumphs over mercy in our mindsets. So, come along with me on an inspiring Sabbath day journey. We have a distance to cover in the kingdom, in the throne room interactions we want to have with our King on this Sabbath day, the seventh day Sabbath. Together, I invite you to come with me, and with the King, let's explore the section of Torah that contains a script for us, and sings over us a song for us. The script is of what we will be encountering, or have been encountering, or will encounter this coming season. The season we're in and the season that's coming after it. So we have a script. And Torah gives us that script. The section of Torah we read each week tells us what script we're living out. But it doesn't just leave us with the script, tell us, here it is, deal with it. It also gives us the theme song of heaven. The sound, heaven's always full of sound. We read the book of Revelation, we read Ezekiel, we read Isaiah. The creatures in the heavenlies, in the throne room, are always singing. They're always releasing a sound of song, of praise, of honor, of worship, of healing. And that song of heaven, he will be releasing a song of heaven over us today through Parsha, Korach, our connection for this season. Now, if we understand the section we're in, then hopefully we'll realize we're about to navigate a difficult area in the world. It is going to happen in the Torah portion, but that is just the script. It is actually happening in every one of us' life, in our world, in our political and economic realm, in the realm of geopolitical interactions, in the world of what's going on from this order to that order. We will encounter the same traps that were incurred, that were prototyped for us in Parsha Korach. So he's trying to teach us the secrets of recognizing, he being our king, is trying to teach us the secrets of recognizing, navigating, and overcoming the dangerous riptide currents and sinkholes that the Creator knows that we will encounter in this and the coming season. So to come with us together, let us observe and meditate upon the stunning lessons and the life hacks that our benevolent Master wants us to be taught regarding our obligations to leave His creation and all the people and places and situations that we encounter in His creation better than we found them. That's the key. That's what He wants us to do. That's why He's releasing not just a script that we have to follow and say, oh man, we're living it for sure, but also the song of redemption, the songs of healing, the songs of praise, the songs of restoration that He's going to give us today. So let's move on together. Before we do so, let's sing our call to worship, our Barakut. If you know it, you can join me in singing it. If not, just if you want to close your eyes, if you're not driving, and if you want to, just sit and quietly and listen. Here we go. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach. Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam. Asher Bacher Banu Mikol Amin V'natan Lanu Et Torato Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Amen. And now may you open our eyes, O Holy One, that we may see wondrous things in your Torah. For we are but strangers in the earth. So do not hide your commandments from us. The closing download of the last verses, last section of Shilach Lakah, the previous portion, the preceding segment of Torah, was in the aftermath of the sin of the spies, as is well known, the 10 spies that gave the negative report of Bnei Israel, of the Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, and who discouraged the rest of the people and caused them to weep and mourn and want to go back to Egypt, elect a captain and go back to Egypt. The last few verses of that were an admonition by the Holy One to us. The words of the Holy One spoke to us at the very end of Shilach Lakah, which will introduce Parsha Korach, because everything's sequential, even at least in revelatory sense. Whether it's chronological is an issue for theological debate, but it's sequential in revelatory effect. And so the last thing he said was tell us to make tzitzis, to make tassels or frayed areas on the corners of our garments. And doing so would do something to us. It would cause us to recall, commemorate, bring back into the full force of our focus and intellect certain things. And what would it be? It would be all the mitzvot, all the instructions of the Holy One. That is what our life force is. So at the end of Parsha Shelach Lecha, right before we get started, he reminded us again that it's important that we keep our focus, our attention, and our activities engaged around the mitzvot, the instructions for living that the Holy One has given. And he says, do not let your hearts and your eyes go after the adulteries, the adulterations that they are tempted toward, that they are inclined to follow. That falls into those things. He says, remember all the mitzvot, and remember that you are holy ones. You are Kedusha carriers. You are holiness bearers for the Holy One, your God. That is who you are. That's your mission. And then he finishes the last portion of Shelach Lecha by saying, Ani Adonai Elohim Asher Hazotzi Echem. I am the Holy One, your God, who has delivered you, brought you forth. Me'eretz Mitzrayim Liot Lachem Elohim. From Egypt, in order that I, the Holy One, could be your God. Ani Adonai Elohim. I am the Holy One, your God. Now, with that stunning, stirring, passionate declaration of a relationship and intimacy and calling upon our lives, we will now enter Parsha Korach. Brace yourselves. The opening lines of Parsha Korach, chapter 16, verse 1 and following of Numbers. The first Hebrew phrase, 2 words. It's very short. I'll give you Hebrew, then I'll give you some English. Vayichach Korach. Vayichach Korach. And then Korach did something. He took something. He was a taker. The Korach became a taker. In the midst of all the things that we just talked about, and the stunning reminder that the Holy One is our God. He has delivered us, and He has given us His instructions to how to live a fruitful and beautiful and productive life that leaves the world better for us being here. Korach he took some things upon himself. So I'll go ahead and into English now. Then Korach ben Yishkar, or ben Yishar, ben Kahat, ben Levi, with Datan and Aviram, the sons of Eliab, and with On, the son of Pelet, the sons of Reuben, took men. Vayachak, again, is that phrase, to take them, to reach out and take authority over men. So Vayachak Korach, he took, and he with his friends Datan and Aviram and On, took men, Yachamu Anashim. And not only did they take men, here's the next step, part 2, verse 2, and they rose up, they stood up with great purpose and force. And they stood up before or in the face of Moshe, with some of Bnei Israel with them. This was a confrontation. And then the Torah describes how many? 250. The princes of the Edah, the witness throne. And proclaimers of the appointed times. I think in some of the English translations it says leaders of renown, but what in Hebrew it's proclaimers of the appointed times. These are the men, and they took them, and they were men of renown and character also. And so what we have here in Parsha Korah, what we are being scripted, and what we are given a song of redemption regarding, is the great falling away. We are about to experience our nation's first and prototypical civil war narrative. And so subtitle of this parsha is Beware the Takers Out There. Beware the ones that are proclaiming resentment and anger and discontent and jealousy, and seeking to position themselves higher on the basis of their superior morality or their superior abstract concept interpretations or their historical remembrances, the way they do it. Beware the takers, because they'll get you. We saw it with Cain and Hevel. We saw it with Ishmael and Isaac. We saw it with Yaakov and Esau. We saw it with Rachel and Leah. We saw it with Joseph and his brothers. Now we're going to see it with Moshe and Aaron and their kinsmen. Yes, their kinsmen, Korach. And then, of course, with Datan and Abiram. Now, I want to talk to you about this great falling away, because this is prototypical of the end of days. The generation of the Exodus was the Gen X in the ultimate biblical sense. Generation of the Exodus is our prototypical generation. And so when we hear about the great falling away of the latter days, it is related to the great falling away of the former days, which is the Korachian rebellion. Now, Yeshua had just these things to say about the great falling away. In Matthew 10, in verse 23, he said, "Brother will deliver up brother to death." Let me just repeat that, a phrase that's a little stunning. Brother will deliver up brother to death, and a father his child. And children will rise up, against their parents, and cause them to be put to death. Now, I hope I've gotten your attention. This is what's going to happen in the great falling away of the latter days. Yeshua is prophesying of it because he's remembering what took place in the days of Korah. Now, he goes on and talk about it further. In Matthew 24, in the great Olivet discourse, as it's called, Yeshua will say in verses 10 through 13, "In those days many will be offended." Offense is a key factor. Many will be offended and will betray one another. So offense leads to betrayal. And they will hate or reject grace and favor for one another. They will have sinat chinam, would be the Hebrew way of phrasing it, toward one another. This means they will be loveless. There will be many, he says, Yeshua continues, there will be many pseudo-prophetes, deceitful orators, and they will rise up, and they will planao in Greek, lead astray many. And because lawlessness will abound, here's another key. There's offense, there's betrayal, there's sinat hanam, there's deceitful orators, there's leading astray, and then there's lawlessness that will abound. The Messiah makes it clear that in the end of days, in the latter great falling away, as in the former great fall away, what we're going to falling away, what we have is lawlessness will abound. And then he says the love of many will grow cold. We will have a degrees and phases of lovelessness, a loss of the power of love, and that is the power of the kingdom. And he says, only he who endures and perseveres to the end will be, Greek sozod, Hebrew yashad, will be brought into a place of fullness and fruitfulness. All right. Now, the ultimate wilderness test that we're about to experience, the test of Korach, Parsha Korach, is not a test of the lower flesh appetites like hunger and thirst and drive for and urge for sexual or physical or sensual pleasure. That was before. That was the previous few parshas. That was the lower level test. The higher level test is a test of pseudo-intellect, the test of what we think we know and how we like to abstractize and conceptualize and get ideas and ideology going and then let it play on our emotions. It is the tree of the fruit, or the fruit of the tree, the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because good and evil are these conceptual ideas, especially in the Western mindset. So, the ultimate wilderness test is one of pseudo-intellect. What we will believe, what we will think, how we will let it make us feel. So I call it Minecraft. The ultimate wilderness test is us dealing with Minecraft. One of the sinkholes or the riptides that we have to navigate in this season is the Minecraft. That's why we call this the propaganda bombardment. We have Minecraft going on. When demagogues and talking heads who are skilled in Minecraft turn on their charm and peddle their poison, who will stand firm? Who will stay in the divine instruction? Who will remember, as the Torah of the Tzitzit required, that we look upon them and remember, commemorate, bring to the forefront of our mind all the mitzvot of the Holy One. This is what life consists of. This is where we find our purpose and our meaning. This is where we find our ability to have good influence and impact on the world. Who will stand firm in that divine instruction? Who will stand firm in the love of the Father, the kingdom? Who will stand firm in service, a humble service to God and to man? On the other hand, who will fall? Who will fall? Who will be taken? Who will fall for and be taken by the serpentine seduction pitch? Who will fall for it, hook, line, and sinker? So, Propaganda bombardment, lawlessness, and lovelessness. These are what we'll be on the watch out for. Sinat Hinam, see if it's beginning to build up in us, a sense that we don't want mercy for other people. We want them to be judged. We don't want them to have a chance to be redeemed. We want them to suffer the consequences of what they have done to us, to our viewpoint, to our ethnicity, to our culture, to our whatever it is that we're holding on to more than the kingdom of heaven. So, we are going to be introduced in Parsha Korach to the man of lawlessness, who is also, of course, the man of lovelessness. We're going to be given a chance to try to dissect the movement behind this man of lawlessness and lovelessness, and what motivated it, and what generated it, what fueled it, and not just dissect what fueled it and what motivated it, but what methodologies it employs, and learn to recognize and navigate around and overcome those methodologies. Those are our adversaries' methodologies. So, welcome to Debat Ra, the negative report. I call it that, but in modern terms, you might call it the politics of personal destruction, the politics of outrage and of offense. Introducing the silver-tongued devil, the man of lawlessness. I sometimes refer to this Parsha as the Parsha of dancing with the devil. The treacherous domain where he traffics is the domain of abstract concepts, of principles, of ideas. It's a seduction of political theory. It is the slippery slope of principle, the high-stakes dance of loveless pseudo-intellectuality and of self-promoting lawlessness. So, Mazeh Korach, who is this Korach? Who is this man of lawlessness? Who is going to introduce us to lovelessness and sinat hinam? Who is going to be promulgating all the propaganda? Who will be feeding on our discontent and manipulating our emotions with principle, rhetoric that has a lot of sound and fury but no substance to it? It is manifested by actual behavior, conduct, or action that makes things better as opposed to just complaining about what is worse. So who is this Korah? Well, here's the sad thing. He's one of us. He's a trusted elder and statesman of our nation. He has been a servant. He's been serving throughout this process. But at some point, for some reason, something happened and he went rogue. So he was one of us, a trusted elder and statesman, one who was content to serve for a while, but who at some point, for some reason, went rogue and became something else, became corrupted, became a man of lawlessness, became a man of lovelessness, became a man of sinat hinam. Now he was from the house of Yisachar. Yisachar means oil anointed, therefore shining and lighting the pathway. He was from the household. His biological father was one who was happy to be anointed, shine, and be the light of the way. He was the light of the world kind of a guy. His clan, the larger clan, further was Kahat, and that's where the same clan that Moshe and Aaron came from, part of the Levite tribe, and that's the next thing. He was of the tribe of Levi, or as the Westerners call him, Levi. So we say, okay, that's a pretty good line he came from. So what happened to it? How did he become a man of lawlessness, a man of lovelessness, a man of sinat hinam? Well, the name Korach means bald, plucked, particularly in the sense of being hair plucked out, and more particularly to a pagan grief practice. And I'm not using pagan as a term of art here, just in general people who don't understand the ways of the Holy One. So plucking out hair to one of these people who don't understand this process, one of the naturalists of the world, is a practice of grief prohibited by the Torah, where whenever one hears or suffers or mourns because someone else has died, then maybe a loved one, then they pull clumps of their hair out. They pull out the hair. They pull it out of their beard. They pull it out of their forehead, the place between their eyebrows, or they pull off the top of their head because of the pain. This is a sign, a symbol of extreme mourning. Well, Korach means man of extreme, out of control mourning. He is angry. He is upset. He is obsessed about something. And that drives, I believe, everything that he does. He's not about what he's for. It's what he's against, what he hates, what he's upset about. Understand, any man that tries to lead you, be careful if what he mostly talks about is what he's upset about, what's wrong with the world, as opposed to what he wants to build from the kingdom of heaven standpoint. So we understand the meaning of the word Korach. We understand his lineage. What are the circumstances under which he took authority? Well, the days of Korach. We've learned to talk about the days of Noah. Well, there are the days of the flood, but also here's the days of Korach. This is prototypical. As I say, it's part of the Gen X, or the Gen Exodus generation, the prototypical generation of which all of human life is patterned after since the Exodus. So he is then, therefore, it means he has experienced the rigors of bondage. He knows what it's like to be in bondage. He grew up in that process. Secondly, he witnessed great signs. He has witnessed great signs and miracles, signs of deliverance, amazing acts of the kingdom of heaven, interventions by the creator of the universe for his sake of his creation. He's witnessed that. He's not oblivious to it. The third thing is he has sung the song of the sea with the redeemed multitudes. Hallelujah. He was caught up in the ecstasy of the goodness of the breath of the Holy One entering human beings and singing the songs of heaven upon the earth. He followed the cloud. He ate the manna. He drank water from the rock. He was there and watched and survived as we survived the attack of Amalek and repelled it because Moshe's hands were lifted up. And as soon as his hands came down, the attack was being successful against us. But whenever the hands were raised back up, he saw Moshe is the key to everything in that process. He also heard the voice of the Creator King at Sinai. He heard the 10 words spoken, the 10 declarations of how the Holy One sees us and desires to remake us in his own image. He was part of the crowd that yelled afterwards, "You speak to him, Moshe. And we'll do what you say. Whatever he tells you to do, we'll do. We'll asah." Well, he's also learned the Torah under Moshe Rabbeinu, under the teaching of Moshe. He has been at Sinai and out of Sinai now walking and learning how to follow the Torah, or at least hearing what Moshe had to say about it. He's also been deeply involved because of who he is and what his clan does in the tabernacle, the Mishkan as it's called, and it's Kedusha craft. He's been part of Kedusha craft, learning how to bring holiness, energy from heaven, from the throne room into real life, earthly situations. He's part of that. That's who he is. But yet he's still going to fall. Yet he's still going to become a man of lawlessness. He's also been witnessed the Nadab and Abihu episode, the falling of fire from heaven, and then the taking of the censers in hand, personal censers in hand by Nadab and Abihu, disregarding the fire that's fallen from heaven and making their own fire. He's seen what happens in regard to that. He's witnessed Taberah, where the complaining and the arguing and the griping took place, and then there was a discipline took place. He's witnessed Kivrot Hata'ava, where the cravings and the appetites and the urges went crazy, and everybody wanted something and misremembered history based on that, so they could think about what they craved and what they wanted in the flesh. He's been a survivor of Hatzerot, which is where Miriam was stricken with Zara'at for 7 days after she and Aharon blasphemed the Holy One and basically spoke Lashon Hara at its greatest point against Moshe. He's just witnessed the sin of the spies and the decree of dying in the desert, except for the fact he knows that Yehoshua and Caleb will not die in the desert. He has been part of or watched the failed invasion of presumption episode of the end of chapter 14 of Numbers. And he's watched the scene or just witnessed the Ishmael incident, the gathering man episode of the last part of chapter 15. And of course he has just heard that Moshe pronounce the Holy One's words about the Zit Mitzvah, staying focused upon the words, the instructions for life of the Holy One. Now, With that being said, that's the context out of which all this will arise. And now I remind you of the Holy One's words through Yeshua. Many are called, but few are chosen. Many are called into the possibility of a life of service, a life of joy, a life of shalom, a life of hope, a life of positive impact and good influence upon the earth, according to the kingdom. Many are called to that, but few are chosen. Few pass the muster of the Master's testing protocols. After you're called, you must be tested before you can be chosen. So few, though many are called, few pass the muster of the Master's testing protocols and graduate and get invited to participate in the higher levels of discipleship, which include rigorous training and selfless service. Many are called, but few are chosen. Now the question is, will you be chosen, beloved? Or will you allow yourself to be taken? The reason more are not chosen is because they have been taken by the great falling away and its prototypes, and the people, the man of lawlessness, the men of lawlessness, the women of lawlessness, the groups, the tribes of lawlessness, the ethnicities and the cultures of lawlessness, and the cultures and the ethnicities and the groups of lovelessness, and the politics of personal destruction, and the innuendo and accusation crowd, and the discontentment playing crowd. Will you be chosen for the greater levels of discipleship, or will you be taken? Now, I want to kind of move into this. If you're not going to be taken, if you're going to be chosen and not taken, you just have to remember who you are and whose you are and why you're here. That is the purpose of the Tzitzit instruction. Look at these and remember who you are and what you're called to do. And the mitzvah, the Torah. Well, do you remember, beloved? Do you remember who you are? Do you remember whose you are? And do you remember why you're here? Do you remember your calling? Do you remember your purpose? Do you remember the tools and the protocols that you have been given by the Creator of the universe? Do you remember the destiny to which He has called you? The influence He's designed you to have? Do you remember that you are, according to the Torah, you are B'Tselem Elohim. You are in the image of the Holy One Creator. You are Goy Gadol. You are a nation, a great nation that He promised to Abraham. You are the source of blessing to all families and households on the face of the earth. You are gloriously redeemed from bondage. You are redeemed for a purpose, to be the Holy One's Am Segula, His special treasure people, His model, His example to the world, His Mamlechet Kohanim, His diplomats, His ambassadors, His emissaries of His kingdom and His throne room to the world. And you're called to be His Goy Kadosh, the people of Kedusha, the people of energy, holy energy that motivates everything they do. You're called to all these things. Do you remember who you are? Do you remember that calling? You remember that's more important than the things you're going to see and the riptides that you're going to encounter in the world, and the men of lawlessness and the men of discontent that you're going to hear griping and complaining. Your purpose and your destiny overrides all that, and as a matter of fact, gives you impetus to go through it and overcome that. So, are you singing and marching to and living out of Psalms 1 and 37? I'll just briefly tell you Psalm 1. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the Torah of the Holy One. And in his Torah he meditates both day and night. He will be like a tree planted by the rivers of living water, which brings forth its fruit in its season. His leaf also shall not wither, but whatsoever he does shall prosper. Are you that? And Psalm 37, which says, fret not because of evildoers. Whatever they're doing, don't fret, because don't get all agitated and frustrated and animated by what the evildoers are doing. Remember who you are. You are Psalm 1. You are the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the ways of the sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But your delight is in the Torah of the Lord. Are you singing and marching to and living out of Psalms 1 and 37? Or are you getting trapped up and wallowing in Psalm 137? 1 and 37, or 137. Psalm 137 is, by the waters of Babylon we laid down and wept for you, Zion. Our captors demanded of us a song of mirth, a song of sing us one of the songs of Zion. How can we sing the songs of Zion in a strange land? Well, are you in that mode? Are you in that mode of depression and frustration and anxiety? Have you been taken? Or are you going to be chosen? Now, I want to move a little bit further and faster here. There are certain things about this that we need to know. A kingdom is a kingdom that must be unified. Not unified around ideology. Not united or around some charismatic leader. A kingdom must be united, because a kingdom divided will not stand. Now, we only see two real great rebellions that are specified in detail in the Holy Writ. One of them is this one, Korah, the son of the tribe of Levi. And then the second one is Absalom ben David, the son of David by Ma'achah. There's a lot of story there. I won't go into those. You should realize these are the two prototypical stories of a kingdom divided. And we see Solomon and his children coming after him and dividing the kingdom in greater sense. These are the patterns that he's trying to tell us. This is what will happen if you let the unity of my presence, of his presence, I should say, of the unity of his words, unity of his mission and his calling, be broken up where there's division. So, when demagogues and talking heads turn on their charm and start peddling their poison, their pseudo-intellectual nonsense, will you stand firm or will you be taken? Now, after the report of the spies in number 16, it says, all the assembly lifted up their voices. The people cried, wept, and they said, why has the Holy One brought us out of this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should become victims? And they said to one another, let us choose, appoint a leader, a rosh, a head, and return to Egypt. Now, this is part of the outgrowth of what's happening. First, there is dissension and discontent and amongst the people, and then there is this urge to have someone lead them, someone that they can give a position of authority to besides Moshe, that they can give it to and choose. Well, that is the substance out of which every rebellion movement will always come. Discontent of the people, followed by a hunger and a beginning to talk about rumblings about finding a new leader, finding someone else. So, say hello to the kinds of leader that discontented multitudes tend to flock to. Say hello to an opportunistic taker, one who takes men, who will try to ride the negativity of discontent to a position of power, and who will use ordinary people as a pawn in their personal war with those that they perceive as their enemies. Korach separates out. It gives us the pattern for how the separation takes place between the chosen, and you're called, but few are chosen, and the taken, those who are taken by the takers, like Korah. As like all demagogues who play on people's pride and discontent and manipulate their emotions and titillate their pseudo-intellect, Korach was a taker, and he took men. So how do demagogues take men? How do you do that? He manipulates emotions. He titillates pseudo-intellect. He plays on discontent. How does he take them? How do demagogues like Korah, how will the demagogues of the latter days, how do the demagogues of our day take men and distract them from their mission, their calling, keep them from being chosen? By using smooth, emotionally charged, pseudo-intellectual oratory. They especially like slogans they can chant regularly. Make it burn. Say it often. Make it burn. They like slogans. Beware of the slogan promoters. They like catchwords and buzzwords that they can say, like, I'll just give you an example from modern day, pro-life or pro-choice. Or they like to use words that will generate positive buzzes for them, even though they don't have substance to them when you get down and you start inspecting it and dissecting it, what's really there. They like the buzzwords, the catchwords. They like accusations. They like labels. They like to apply labels to people, derogatory labels that make you generate anger in you. One of those would be like today, racist, or sexist, or chauvinist. You can put out all sorts of different misogynist, all sorts of different names that people like to throw out that immediately create a negative emotion in people. But really, when you get down to it, they lump people together without actually dealing with facts. They only deal with drawing out emotions from a sense of discontent and injustice that people have harbored as an offense in their lives. So they like to also shout ad hominem against the person, personal assault attacks against high-profile statesmen. They prey on your discontent. See, don't let your discontent build in you, because it becomes a feeding ground for the men of lawlessness and lovelessness. They prey on idleness, where you're not actually doing the things that you're called to be, where you're thinking about it, you're sitting around discussing it, moralizing about it, propagandizing about it, just hypothetically talking about stuff as opposed to actually doing it. They prey on discontent, they prey on idleness, they prey on lust, they prey on greed, they prey on envy. That's how they do it. That's how they take you. From where they take you from. From what do demagogues like Korah, what the men of lawlessness of this world take men? How do they get you out of it? And what do they take you from? Well, from the Holy One. They take us from the Holy One. They take us from intimacy with Him, communion with Him, conversation with Him, following Him, being led by Him, sensing His presence. They take us from all of that. They take us from His Torah, His instructions for how life is to be lived. They focus on abstract concepts and ideas and good and evil and moral and immoral and bad and all those things. But they don't focus on what He has instructed us to do. They don't instruct us on who He is or what He is doing in relation to one or more of us and how He is actually interacting with us. What He's saying. They take your attention away. They take you away from the grand plan of redemption and restoration. They make you focus on what's evil in the world, what's wrong with the world, what's wrong with people. They lump things together. They throw it out in generalities. And what you lose is the sense that there's hope. There's a sense that each person is uniquely created by the Holy One, not lumped into some group that you don't like. Each person is a human being that has the potential of being awakened in their neshama, in their spiritual realm, to be able to take on the kedusha of the Holy One and be changed. Well, they take that away from you. And they take away the Holy One's humble, gentle, merciful, patient, and wise ways. In exchange for what? What do they give you? Well, let's talk about that. They take you to what, to where, and to what end? They take you to form over substance, the exaltation of form over substance. They take you to the exaltation of concept over actual service of anybody that really means something in somebody's life. They'll talk all about ideas and concepts and abstracts and statistics and numbers, but they will not actually serve anybody in any way that makes their life better. They take you to principles instead of goodness, kindness, gentleness. They take you to outrage. They love to generate outrage in you. If they can generate outrage in you, they know they've got you distracted from the plan of the Holy One, because outrage and the plan of the Holy One do not go together. They take you to slander. They can make you say something dark or depressing or even gossiping toward other people. They got you. They've got you. They've taken you away from the plan of the Holy One. If they can take you to sarcasm, where you're smart aleck, where you're cynical and you're proud and you throw out your cute little sayings, they take you away from that which is real, which is words of encouragement, words of edification, words of hope and life and peace. They take you to lawlessness. Lawlessness in the biblical sense means that you just do not care what Torah says. You don't care what the Holy One says. You care what you think in your brain. You care what you believe. You care what your doctrine tells you. You care about things that are all compacted within your own brain and your own heart, your own bodily soul. They take you away from the great, beautiful spiritual realm of life, health, and peace into lawlessness and, of course, progressive lovelessness. The more you're lawless, the more you get away from the Torah, the more you get away from the beautiful ways of the Holy One, you begin to be less and less able to love. Your love capacity diminishes and drains down to a fragment of what it could be. You can't even really love yourself. You can't love your neighbor. You can't love your family members right. The love dries up. So they take you to lovelessness. They take you to hypocrisy. You can tell everybody what's wrong with them, but you can't fix what's wrong with yourself. They take you to despair. You have all sorts of things that you say are the trends are all bad. They're all negative. You have no hope within you. They take you to failure of essential purpose. What you're here to do, you can't do. You won't do. Now, Yehuda in the Brit Hadashah, in his letter, says of these men, they are grumblers. Do you recognize them? They're complainers. Do you recognize that? They walk according to their own lust. Do you sense that? And they mouth great swelling words. Recognize that. They flatter people to gain advantage. They flatter whole ethnicities or whole cultures to gain advantage. Oh, you can see this happening today. These are sensual persons, Yehuda says. All about the senses and all what feels good. They cause divisions. They thrive on causing divisions. Not having the Ruach, not having the breath, the energizing breath of the Holy Spirit upon them. But Yehuda goes further. He says, but you, beloved, building yourselves up in the excellence of Kedusha, holiness, and emunah, faith, trust, praying in accordance with the Holy Ruach HaKodesh, keep yourselves in the love of God. We have a responsibility to keep ourselves in the love of God, not to keep ourselves in the doctrines of men. Keep ourselves in the love of God, looking for the mercy of the Holy One, the Lord Yeshua HaMashiach, unto the life beyond the veil. Haye Olam, eternal life, as the English Bibles like to call it. Keep looking for the mercy. Never give in to judgment triumphs over mercy. Always mercy triumphs over judgment. All right, Korach's message. Once you get through all the politics of personal destruction stuff that he throws it in, the slime that he packages it in, it's simple. He says, Rav Lachem. He's speaking specifically to Moshe and Aaron. He looks at the people who he once said, you speak to him, the Holy One, and you can tell us what to do and we'll do it. Rav Lachem. In other words, in Hebrew, in English rather, the translation might be, too much you. Too much of you. You're too much. There's too much of you in this process. Rav Lachem. You've grown, you think you're too much. So there's this personal thing. This is the seed of everything that's in Korah's message. This will always be the seed in the man of lawlessness' message. Rav Lachem. You have taken too much upon yourself. You too much of you. I've had enough of you. And then it goes on. Then he packages it in this beautiful rhetoric, this idea. It's sneaky, tricky, high-sounding noise. All the congregation, all the Edah, actually the witness throng, is holy. Doesn't that sound good? Every one of them equally was the insinuation. Everyone is equally holy. Let me tell you, they're not. If you want to start dissecting it, that's not the case. You know it's not the case. Everyone knows it's not the case, but this is the high-sounding rhetoric. All the Edah is holy, it's Kadosh, equally. And then he goes, and the Holy One is in them, and among them equally is this insinuation. Well, that all sounds egalitarian and sounds like some constitutions of some countries we know and part of the French Revolution and all this egalite, fraternite, all that stuff. But here's the deal. It has no substance to it. It's just words. And as a matter of fact, it's totally incomprehensible when you get down. Just principle, just ideas, as opposed to actually speaking any real policy that's going to make something better. And then he goes on, and then he attacks his last message. Why then do you exalt yourselves over the people? Wait a minute. When did Moshe and Aharon exalt themselves? I seem to remember, first of all, that the Holy One exalted them, and secondly, that the people themselves exalted Moshe and Aaron. Well, you see how history gets rewritten, and how it's changed. We misremember whenever we follow the man of lawlessness, and we come up with all sorts of redefinitions of terms and ideas and concepts, and we redefine how we got here and where we came from and who's to blame for it. Well, that's the message of Korach. That's the secrets we're supposed to be watching out for, the pitfalls, the slime pits that we need to watch out for. So it was a false narrative. It was an abstract concept. It was nonsense, of course. You know, equality is a figment of the fallen human imagination. It sounds good. We love it. I'd love to hear about it. It makes us feel good. It gives us emotion. It's why we can be manipulated by people talking around about equality, because it has emotional draw to it. We all want to be equal. Well, instead, each person is a unique creation of the Master's hand. There is no equality. Each one of us is designed for a specific purpose. Each one has specific giftings and callings. Each one has specific instructions and different challenges to overcome. There is no such thing as equality except in the mind of man. We are holy when we are connected to the Creator in thought and in speech and in behavior. But each one is then holy in a different, unique way, not the same way. It doesn't manifest itself the same way in each person. It's not equal. Each one has a unique contribution to make to the grand plan of redemption and restoration, not an equal part. Each one each one of us is special and unique, and we do not lock ourselves under egalitarian theory. That is all Western pseudo-intellectual nonsense. And it's blatantly anti-God and anti-kingdom. Well, now the other issue is not just what Korach's methods were and what his language were, what his telltale signs are, but what does his egalitarian rhetoric trigger in those who hear it and those who listen to it and those who are taken by it? Well, we get that picture drawn by Datan and Aviram. Whenever Moshe came to them and came to their tents and said, "Come up, and we're going to go to the tabernacle, and we're going to have the Holy One decide what's going to happen here about leadership," they said, "You have not brought us. Lo na'aleh, you have not brought us up. You have not caused us to." And actually, no, lo na'aleh, which is the actual words that they use in response to Moshe. This is Datan and Aviram. The words these hearers of Korach actually used, they didn't repeat his phrases. They could have, but they didn't. They said, "Lo na'aleh, you have not caused us to ascend, to rise up. You have not caused us to resurrect. There's no resurrection, in other words, for us. There's no ascension for us. We're never going to get up from this. You have not brought us into a land of milk and honey," they said, "nor given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards." Do you hear anything about the Holy One here? Do you hear anything about the plan of God, the redemptive plan of God? No, you just hear about personal discontent and offense and blame shifting. What are all these high-sounding egalitarian words Korach mentioned? What they stirred up was not goodness or some sort of nobility. What they stirred up was rage. That's what they're designed to stir up. It just fuels discontent and grows in people, causes them to have a sense of moral justification for staging a rebellion. I'll repeat that. It gives them a sense of moral justification for staging a rebellion. Be careful. This is how you get taken instead of chosen. And that's the way it always goes with the high-sounding rhetoric and slogans of mankind, of men. However well-meaning they may start, it always degenerates quickly into overwrought emotion, jealousy, rage, greed. It always ends up with conflict. It always ends up with division. It always ends up in death. So let's talk a little bit about the lo na'aleh. He says, lo na'aleh. Do you believe there will be a redemption? Do you believe? Because Datan and Abiram lost that hope because of Korach's message. They took it, and inside it developed in them this hunger, this scream, Lo na'aleh, we will not arise, we will not ascend, we will not be resurrected. Do you believe in an ascension, in a redemption? Do you believe in a have you lost faith in that? Do you believe that mankind can still be redeemed? Do you understand? Or does it drive you that the Holy One has set you in place to be a blessing to every household and family on the face of the earth? His own image reflecting, B'Tselem Elohim, the shadow, the image of God. Do you understand that you're supposed to be the Psalm 1, man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the Torah of the Holy One. In his Torah he meditates day and night. Do you understand these things? Or are you a lo na'ale, a rav lachem, taken person? Well, beloved, that's the beginning point of our discussions of Parsha Korach. I commend the rest of the study to you, the rest of the Parsha to you. This is your script of how you will deal with this coming season. This is and hopefully you'll find in it the love song, the theme, the redemptive song that will help you march in the cadence of heaven to walk right through and around all the pitfalls, all the slime pits, all of the riptides, and overcome and become chosen to be the representatives of our King to your age, your generation, and the generations to come. Well, Shabbat Shalom. Drop me a note. Let me know you were here. If you have a prayer request, a comment, let us know. Blessings to you. Amen.